Hi, this is Stan. Welcome back to the Crow's Nest Railroad. Well, today we got to build Jacob's ladder here, so let's get busy. And so the plan is to make a metal structure like this with the rails and this threaded rod, connect these temporary panels, place them on the driveway, and then build custom sleepers the right thickness and the right bevel to accommodate the slope on the driveway. I bought some 1/4-20 threaded rod at Home Depot, cut it down into small sections. I think these were about 6 1/4 inches long, and dressed the ends. And then got some nylon lock nuts. And I made a small jig, a couple of jigs actually. This one shows the spacing of the nuts in the rods, and I'm going to prepare all the rods this way. And then this jig holds the rail in the proper position for the gauge. In my case, it's 5 inches. So it'll hold that gauge, and I can check it with my gauge block. Got it all locked in. And then I scribed a line on here to show me where to drill the holes. So I'll drill a hole in each rail, and then apply this rod, and then add the nuts to the outside, and I'll check the gauge with this gauge bar, and I can adjust these inner nuts to make sure that it's falling in gauge. So the next thing I've got to do is put nuts on all of these. So that'll be kind of fun. So I better get busy. Alrighty then. That job is done, thankfully. So this is what I think is going to be my starting point. This is unexplored territory for me. I laid some of the track rails out on the driveway to get a rough idea of where the sections would be and basically where the turn has to be. And so I have to start somewhere, and the radius of this rail is a good place as any to start, rather than starting on a straight panel, which will be pretty easy to engineer. So as I laid it out on the drive, I'm going to call this my guide rail, because you can never quite bend, at least I could never quite bend 2 rails exactly perfect so that one is slightly greater radius. So I have to call one rail my guide and then make the other rail flex a little bit to match it. So here's my rail. This is going to be the inside rail, and I've got it clamped to the table, and I've got the rough spacing here, and there's nothing holding it in place except I've got this clamp down on the ends, and here's our little guide block. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to square up the ends. You could never have too many clamps in the workshop, I guess that's obvious. And hopefully the 2 rails won't walk this way and slide with reference to each other. Alright, 2 holes, rinse and repeat. So I'm going to unclamp this piece I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of holes. And I think what I'm going to do is secure some of these tie bolts in the middle before I drill the ends. That'll allow me to still be able to spread the rails to get these all thread inserted. But hopefully if I get some of these locked in the center, it'll keep these rails parallel reference to one another. So let's try this and see if it'll work. I start on this guide rail, and the first thing is to tighten this bolt snug so it can't move on this rail, and then I'll switch to the other side and pull it into gauge. So this is a bit too snug here, so I need to roll this one out slightly and this one in slightly. Just right. Okay, this section of curve is done. It's pretty resistant to racking as I put pressure on here. When I get the sleepers in, that should really help to lock it down. But this should hold the gauge, and I can always do micro adjustments on the gauging with this threaded rod. So that's another beauty of this system. So time to lay this out on the drive and plan the next section. Okay, there's our completed section. This is kind of my key to the whole thing. Let's walk this way. Over here, that's sort of a fixed end. And this is hopefully going to be, well, there'll be one 10-foot section here up to that blue mark, and then a partial section. But in terms of engineering, just doing a straight section is not that complicated, obviously. But where the turn begins and the exact radius of the turn and things like that, that requires a little more planning. And normally I would be staggering the ends of the rail so that you don't have any kinks that happen at the same time. But I can't do that with a temporary panel. So I've got to square it off at the ends on this. So we'll come around here, and then what I'm hoping, right here, it'll join this other curve. What I'm hoping is I can, everything from here all the way back up to that last ground panel, I'm hoping all of this can stay in place. I've got some synthetic ties that I'm going to be using on the concrete here, just like I did over on the other walkway. So we'll have to trim the bottom of the door a little bit, but this will all stay in place, hopefully. And then I'll have some temporary tie plates. So I'll have one curve, a shorty, and a full 10-foot straight that will comprise the temporary track. And here you can see the process is the same for the straight sections, except way less complicated. Alright, there's the full-size ladder and our radius ladder. So I'll just have to make a shorty that fits in here. It won't be a full 10 feet. Well, 3 temporary sections are finished. Well, not exactly finished, but at least they're all bolted together as like an aluminum ladder. So I've got one long 10-footer, I've got a short 7-footer, and then this one curved section, and then right here, this will join up with track that I will lay on the ground and will stay hopefully there until it joins over here with that last panel that was put in on the ground. So the next thing is we've got to join these panels So let's head over to the workbench and I'll tell you what I'm thinking. The rail joiners I'm using for the permanent panels that are in the ground bedded in the ballast are these. Pretty small. This is a number 6 maybe. Pretty tiny. I'm going to beef that up, and instead of 4 small ones I'm going to use 2 number 10s and a big nylon secured nut on the outside. And I'm going to engineer short pieces of aluminum that are just aluminum bar. This I believe is 1/8 inch and this is 3/16. I didn't measure it, so don't quote me on that, but I wanted the thin one to be able to tuck in underneath the head of the rail and not create a problem for the flanges on the wheels. The thick one on the outside to give a little more rigidity, and just 1 bolt here, 1 bolt there. So I'll cut these to length on the chop saw, and then I'll drill out the holes on the drill press, and then I'll have to customize it for each end of the panel because some of them already have perforations in the rail and some don't because of the way I cut it. Well, I got all 3 sections done and the little connectors made for all these temporary sections. Look at this. Got a few of these rods left over. Now, in my defense, I originally thought when I bought the rod and the supplies that this whole section of track that I think is now going to be permanent was going to be temporary as well. But maybe I'll change my mind, or maybe I'll need a few of these. Anyway, I hope this process has been interesting for you. If you have a similar situation where you've got a home track, but at some point you have to cross the driveway and you may or may not be able to have track there permanently. I have an HOA, and so probably that's not going to be the case. It'll have to be put down and then removed. Anyway, going to leave it there for this week. Thank you so much for watching. Hope this has been interesting for you, and I'll see you right here next time.